Ding, your HP bar cheat code has been credited. Cloudy Ocean Encampment, Cloudy Ocean First Central Hospital. Ophthalmology. The doctor looked at the very haggard young man in front of him with some suspicion. He was very suspicious if he had seen the right patient with this kidney deficiency appearance. You nodded.
Yes.
Aries young man. The doctor suppressed his doubts and asked, "What are your symptoms?" Aries paused and said, "Lately, my eyes have not been feeling quite comfortable. I see a red tint overlaying everything I look at. It disappears with a blink, but reappears with another blink. Then when I look at dark objects, especially shadows, I always feel like something is off." At this moment, Aries stared straight at a point a few centimeters above Doctor's head, where it seemed like something was gathering. Finally, the light spot in that elongated object turned into a row of numbers 18. The whole thing looked just like Aries's HP bar in a game. Doctor happened to ask how old you were at this moment. Aries happened to be looking at the row of numbers and said, 18. Then he realized,
Doctor, you were asking about my age, right?
Doctor was speechless. He thought to himself,
what else could I ask?
This child should go see a neurologist. This doctor looks pretty healthy. But if the 18 on his head is his HP bar, then he is not far from death. The doctor asked again,
do you drink?
Aries' attention was focused on something flying around randomly. He instinctively asked,
do you drink now?
The doctor was speechless. Aries also realized that he seemed to be answering the wrong question. He quickly explained,
Sorry. I was distracted.
The doctor covered his head in pain. He thought to himself,
this is not just being distracted. It's like you've lost your soul.
So he said,
young man, it seems like you have trouble concentrating. Never mind, I'll still take a look at you.
After saying this, Doctor stood up and took out a small flashlight. He aimed the flashlight at Aries' eyes and had him look left and right. Apart from some redness, there was basically no issue. In the end, he could only say,
it's nothing major. All the values are pretty normal. You probably have a common conjunctivitis. I will prescribe some eye drops for you to use at home.
Aries thanked the doctor and then turned and left the examination room. Now, in his eyes, the entire hospital corridor was blood red. Doctors, nurses, patients, and visitors were coming and going, with their HP bars densely packed above their heads. One big guy who looked like he was bleeding profusely had a whopping 73 health points. He must be perfectly fine. Looking around the whole circle, except for a few people in wheelchairs, who did look a bit weak, most of them had health points above 50. What's the situation with the 18 from the ophthalmologist just now? Forget it, he is a doctor, he must be more knowledgeable than him. He just walked out thinking about treating illnesses. What illness? It's clear that his own cheat code has arrived. Although he still doesn't know what use it is to be able to see the HP bar. He walked out of the hospital. Various news and slogans were displayed on the large screen outside. Night Guard Bureau has started a new round of recruitment. 100 years ago, Blue Earth was shocked by the emergence of numerous powerful and terrifying exotic species from the abyssal rift. They rampaged across Blue Earth for a century, establishing several unbreakable Level 1 encampments and many Level 2 or 3 encampments. Cloudy Ocean, where many of the Level 2 encampments are located, is one such Level 2 encampment. At this moment, Aries is smoking a cigarette, swaying as he walks home. He suddenly realized that his shoelace was untied. As a dignified transmigrator, he must maintain a neat appearance. Thinking about it, he bent down to tie his shoelaces. Just as Aries was about to tie a cute bow on his shoelace, he suddenly felt something was wrong. His surroundings started to turn cold and gloomy. The sound around him suddenly drifted away from him. A chill started to spread from the depths of his heart throughout his body. In the end, he felt as if he had plunged into an icy cave. He struggled to lift his head. Everything around him seemed to have become dilapidated, as if it had experienced some sort of calamity. And not far away, countless warriors dressed in combat suits were locked in battle with a group of strange and exotic species. Ares was starting to feel a bit short of breath at this point. And when he lifted his head, he actually found that the sun in the sky became extremely eerie. It emitted abnormal light, and what was even more terrifying was that he actually saw an HP bar above that sun. This problem is a bit big. He started to panic. Okay. Shadow, are you playing like this? Just when Ares felt he might be done playing, I don't know where from, a drop of faintly glowing water fell straight down. It fell on Ares' forehead. In an instant, the bizarre black and gray scene receded like a tide. Ares stood in place. And the lively bustling voices that were there before, those voices reappeared in Ares' ears. Ares looked around somewhat bewildered for a moment. He stood there, looking at the sun overhead, bright and warm. Also, on top of his head was a long HP bar. Just when Ares was standing foolishly, a sneaky person approached him and said,
"Want to buy drugs, bro?"
"The genuine drugs cost 10,000. I'll sell them for 5,000. The effect is exactly the same," Ares said while picking his nose.
"Do you think you're the drug god? There are monsters all over this city, and you still have the mind to sell drugs."
The drug dealer thought Ares was crazy.
"How can there be monsters with such a safe city?"
He grumbled and was about to leave. Ares then called out to him,
"Wait a minute."
The drug dealer was not happy at that moment.
"If you're not buying, don't get in the way of my business,"
he said. Little did he expect Ares to slyly ask,
"Do you sell miracle oil?"
Before long, Ares hung up the tip-off call on the bus. That drug dealer is truly unscrupulous. He charges 3,000 for a bottle of miracle oil. Ares, with a sense of justice, quickly made a report. Thumbs up for his sense of justice. He looked at the scenery passing by outside the window. Ares even felt that he might be a little paranoid. This was no different from what he usually saw. Could it be that he was mistaken before? And now Ares is a little concerned. His chest is a bit sore. Could it be that he, a grown man, is going through a second puberty? No, he has to go home and check on it quickly. Ares, who arrived at the station shortly, rushed home running all the way. He took off his clothes and headed straight to the toilet. Took a shower. Feels much better now. But when he looked in the mirror, what's this? Why is there a pattern on his chest? Wait a minute. This pattern looks familiar. Could it be the pattern from the book that fell on him at the library before? It's odd indeed. His eye problem also started from that time. Suddenly, the pattern on his chest started to ache severely again. His chest is hot and painful again. Ares quickly turned on the shower and adjusted it to cold water. He started to pour water over pattern and immediately felt much more comfortable. After about a minute of rinsing, the pain began to fade. He took a moment to look at the mirror. His HP bar was actually full. He was unbelievably healthy. Ares felt a little proud. That's more like it. Suddenly, Ares felt something black move under his feet. He quickly looked down. He didn't find anything black. But the problem is that the light was on. There should be a black thing on the ground, a shadow. His shadow is gone. He suddenly turned into a big monkey and started jumping up and down in the bathroom. His shadow is missing. Ares happened to change angles. The shadow was once again reflected on the wall. It's a good thing he thought the shadow had run away. Although I don't know what impact it will have, this is definitely not a good thing. When Ares finishes showering and is about to open the bathroom door to go out, a dark figure stood silently at the doorway. His whole body was pitch black, like a surging mass of darkness. His two eye sockets showed no sign of eyeballs. He just stared straight at Ares. For a moment, their four eyes met, and they looked at each other in silence. Are you playing with me like this? The good news now is that Aries' shadow is indeed not lost or run away. The bad news is that shadow has come back to life. You are already a mature shadow. You need to solve math problems on your own. Late at night, only a few houses still had their lights on, and Aries' house was one of them. Aries spoke and raised his hand. The shadow swayed as it raised its hand unsteadily. Aries then said,
"Lift your leg."
Shadow swayed again as it lifted its leg shakily. Aries saw this scene and immediately had an evil grin on his face. He smirked so wickedly that even Shadow felt shivers down his spine. "Shadow, why don't you dance a little?" Immediately, Shadow seemed to have been triggered as if something had been switched on. His whole body started to shake. His hand movements were so standard that they could not be more standard. Between the haze, Aries felt as if BGM was playing in his mind, feeling a bit confused for a moment. At this moment, the pattern on his chest burst into a bright light. The light sphere detached from the body. It gathered in midair to form something resembling a lottery wheel. Vaguely, Aries saw the 3 words on top were Deity Extraordinary Individual. Finally, after the wheel spun rapidly, it stopped at the word
Individual.
Immediately, a light screen rapidly unfolded in front of him. Aries exclaimed in surprise,
"Is this Shadow's attribute panel?"
with a single thought from Aries. A detailed introduction of Shadow is then revealed. It turns out that Shadow has all of Aries' memories. It can also carry out simple commands. But it doesn't have the ability to think independently. Aries looked at the screen in front of him, and then looked at the shadow behind him, which was still shaking vigorously. He reached out and passed his hand through Shadow's chest. "It seems that it has no physical form," Aries asked.
"Do you possess all of my memories?"
Shadow nodded somewhat numbly. Upon hearing this, Aries came to the table. He took out pen and paper to write something down. After a moment, he finished writing. He called Shadow over. It turned out to be a math problem. Aries handed the pen over and said,
"This is my summer homework. Give it a try."
Aries suddenly realized a problem.
"Wait a minute. Can it grab the pen without a physical form?"
To their surprise, Shadow reached out and successfully grasped the pen. So does this person have a physical form after all? Aries kept poking Shadow with his hand. He passes through the opponent's body every time. He was a little frightened for a moment. But the next moment, Shadow put down the pen, and it looked at Aries with an innocent face. Aries was stunned.
"Why aren't you writing?"
He looked again, and his face turned green. Shadow just wrote one solution. Aries became angry and immediately tried to hit Shadow. However, he missed. He couldn't help but curse.
"Bullshit memory. I could solve these kinds of problems in just 2 minutes for fun."
Are the questions he set too difficult? Aries thought for a moment.
"Then write down horse breaking the sky for me."
Upon hearing this command, Shadow no longer felt sleepy. Its writing was so fast, like flowing clouds in water. It quickly wrote,
"Horsepower."
At this moment, the youth is about to finish writing the first chapter. What a talent! His novels in his mind are all transcribed by Shadow. If he publishes them, he will make a fortune. This can make a lot of money. He asked Shadow to continue copying the book. Aries plans to look at the remaining abilities. He thought, and then clicked on this Shadow Devourer. It can devour darkness to gain energy. So Aries came to the corner of the wall, squatted down, and reached out his hand. But after a while, nothing happened. This broken ability doesn't even have an instruction manual or beginner's tutorial. At least it should let me get familiar with it. Aries is pissed off. As for this Shadow Eyes, Aries has also witnessed it. It seems that what he saw before was the hidden side of this world. Thinking as he turned to Shadow and said,
"Don't copy for now. Do a few push-ups and let me see.
Shadow nodded and stood up from his seat. And then it was under Aries' gaze. It sank down to the ground until it completely disappeared. Hey, where did you go when I asked you to do push-ups? And what about Shadow? Shadow helps me get stronger by exercising. Isn't that cheating? He saw his own shadow disappear all of a sudden. Aries immediately became anxious. The overhead ceiling. Kitchen. He even searched through the toilet, but still couldn't find it. At this moment, Aries felt a slight movement in his heart. As he turned around, he saw something that looked like a black hole. Shortly after, a dark figure emerged from the air. It was Aries' shadow. What exactly is this shadow? Aries couldn't help but furrow his brow and asked,
Where did you just go?
Shadow picked up a paper and pen from the table. He wrote down,
Hidden side Aries.
And Aries felt a stir in his heart.
It should be the hidden side Aries of the world.
He continued asking,
Where did you go, and what were you doing there?
Shadow then wrote,
Push-ups.
Why did he specifically go to Hidden Side to do push-ups? Is the training effect better in Hidden Side? He waved his hand and let Shadow go train. Shadow nodded. Then it turned around and seeped back into the ground, disappearing from sight. Aries sighed as he watched Shadow disappear. He then sat back down at the computer desk, opening the computer and graphics tablet. In fact, Aries, besides being a student, is also a highly popular manga artist. Drawing on his previous art experience, the transmigrated Aries directly copied the shonen manga he had seen before and instantly became a big hit. Aries' online handle is
Carry a knife on a rainy night.
His online handle is also widely known. While Aries took a half-month break, he should also start the new season. In the blink of an eye, a night has passed. Aries was sleeping soundly on the table, drooling onto the drawing board. It turns out that Aries was too engrossed in his creation that night. He fell asleep unknowingly. Suddenly, a knocking on the door was heard. Aries struggled to open his eyes. He then realized that he had actually fallen asleep like that all night. His back ached from sleeping in that position. His joints kept making noise whenever he moved. Standing up, Aries yawned as he walked over to open the door. As soon as he opened the door, he saw a girl with 93% health points standing in front of the door. It was none other than Aries' childhood sweetheart and classmate Lucia. She was also a loyal fan of shonen manga. Wait a minute, Aries was taken aback. How did Lucia lose HP all of a sudden? He glanced at the calendar and understood. It's that time of the month when she bleeds. He touched his nose and averted his gaze. Aries asked,
Why are you here so early?
Lucia didn't even respond. She just darted into the house. Aries pursued,
I saw your post last night. It said you're getting ready to start a new season.
And your content is also settled. Quickly show me the settings. At that moment, there was a loud noise behind Lucia, even making her little face turn pale. She immediately turned around angrily and shouted,
Aries!
You don't have to slam the door even if you don't want to show me. Are you throwing a temper tantrum? Lucia looked more pale after a closer look. She only saw the closed security door. There were fine cracks along the edges of the door frame and the wall. This scared Lucia to even swallow her saliva. Aries didn't respond. Instead, he looked somewhat dumbfounded at his own arms. The muscle lines were clear and smooth. With just a little force, he could feel strength filling his entire arm. Lucia looked somewhat surprised at Aries' slightly muscular figure. After looking him up and down, she blurted out,
You've been working out.
But isn't this Aries, your character setting? You are simply the epitome of an otaku who never exercises. How could you possibly have this perfect muscular body overnight? Suddenly, Lucia remembered something and quickly asked, Wait, Aries, did you take any drugs? Pay attention to this man. He gets stronger just by lying there doing nothing. Facing Lucia's inquiries, Aries definitely cannot reveal the secret of his shadow. It's not worth the risk of being caught and used for experiments. So he could only shake his head and deny, saying that he has been diligently exercising recently. Lucia is not polite at all. She went up and lifted Aries' clothes in one go. This made both of them blush. Lucia then realized that it was not very appropriate. But she still looked up and down at Aries, commenting on his training intensity. How could he have developed an 8-pack abs in just a few days? But I have seen some cases handled by my father. Aries, those things should not be touched at all. You can still turn back now. Aries couldn't help but sneer.
What trouble can I have? You'd better shut up.
Lucia not only didn't stop, but instead took a step forward. She directly restrained Aries with a grappling hand, then reached behind her waist.
Aries was surprised. This girl is serious.
He quickly shouted.
Hey, let's talk it out. What are you doing? What are you taking out?
Lucia then withdrew her hand. She took out something resembling a bracelet from behind her waist. Without saying a word, she put it on Aries. Before Aries could speak, Lucia said,
Don't move. This is a tester for checking pollution levels.
Lucia was staring intently at the small screen on the tester. She casually explained,
Eliminate exotic species and ingest foreign objects.
Fresh resentment will subject you to a certain degree of pollution. If you do not timely eradicate these pollutions, accumulation will lead to human degradation and alienation. Aries smiled mischievously upon hearing these words. His abilities come from the manual in front of his chest. It's impossible for pollution to exist. But at this moment, his chest suddenly reacted. The tester numbers began to rise. Aries glanced to the side and found that Lucia had somehow pulled out a gun. Damn, she's about to lose it on me. Thinking of this, Aries quickly suppressed the strangeness in his body. Soon, the numbers visibly dropped again, finally returning to normal. Aries looked at Lucia and smiled bitterly.
See, I told you there was nothing wrong.
Lucia looked at him suspiciously. It seemed that there was no problem. Aries took a deep breath and couldn't help but ask,
But did you draw your gun? You were really going to kill me.
Lucia explained.
My father taught me. We must be careful in everything.
As she spoke, she holstered her gun. Aries understood. He knew he couldn't continue dwelling on this topic, or he wasn't sure if he could handle it. So, he changed the subject and said,
I've recently drawn some shonen character settings. Do you want to take a look?
Lucia, as a hardcore shonen manga fan, is absolutely unable to resist such a thing. She almost pounced on Aries in excitement. After a lot of persuasion, he gave her a complete set of new shonen art books. Finally, Aries convinced her to go back. After Lucia left, Aries collapsed onto the bed. Dealing with girls is much more exhausting than drawing manga. After taking a moment to recover, Aries pulled out his drawing tablet. He looked at the system logs. Aries was completely dumbfounded. This is way too outrageous. This shadow has been working out all the time. He's the one working out, while I am enjoying life. As Lucia was being dealt with by Aries, he just flicked his hand. A dark aura swirled down. A black mist suddenly emerged from the floor. Aries' shadow finally squeezed out from the floor. Aries, seeing this scene, nodded slightly in approval. Very good. I have already felt the results of your training last night, which can be said to be very obvious. However, we cannot be satisfied with the present. I want to increase the difficulty and make us faster and stronger. Shadow doesn't know that he is considered a quite useful tool in Aries' eyes now. It keeps nodding foolishly. Aries immediately became interested. Then let's add push-ups. Walking plank one-handed handstand two-finger push-up. Handstand tiger push-up, followed by another set of Russian push-up. Human flag pistol squat, followed by spider crawl and shakes the belly. Aries can be said to have repeated all the exercise methods he knows, and he even looked up some new ones. At this moment, Lucia, who was eavesdropping outside the door, heard the sounds of exercising coming from inside. She hasn't even heard of more than half of the names of these exercise techniques. She could only sigh inwardly. It seems that Aries is really working out. She must have been too suspicious. It's annoying that I worried so much. Fortunately, he is fine. Lucia, relieved, skipped happily all the way home. She still needs to hurry up and read this manga. Just like this, on Shadow's first day with Aries, Aries' entire life changed. Shadow didn't stop for a night. The exercise was so diligent. Aries, on the other hand, had a comfortable sleep. Not tired at all, but his physical fitness was improving. Shameful. We young people, how can we be content with the status quo? So, on the second day, Aries doubled the intensity of Shadow's training. The results were outstanding. He developed sharp abdominal muscles and strong, firm chest muscles. Really makes people drool at the sight. Now Aries is even considering sparring with Lucia again. He can easily overpower Lucia. But all this is not important. What matters is to continue training and make himself stronger. Later, Aries was visited by Lawson. Lawson serves in the Night Guard Bureau. However, he is getting older and has lost an arm. Now he mostly handles logistical work. Aries can feel that Lawson is no longer his match. Even 3 Lawsons would not be a challenge for him. On the third day, Aries sat up in bed, thinking to himself,
Aries, oh Aries, how could you have fallen so low? You cannot live such a comfortable life. To obtain extraordinary abilities, you need to be tough on yourself. Aries, you must work hard.
On the 4th day, Aries continued to scroll through Douyin and play games in bed. He left Shadow alone to continue training. On the 5th day, Aries finally stopped lying down. He changed to sitting in front of the computer desk to play games. Is Shadow still training? On the 6th day, Aries finally remembered that he should exercise a bit. So, he voluntarily did 10 push-ups. The end. In fact, Aries' current physical fitness is such that doing dozens of push-ups is a piece of cake for him. He only did 10 out of pure laziness. However, now Aries has also discovered some issues. In these few days, Shadow's point has only increased by 8 points. It can be said to be very little. At this rate, it's uncertain when Shadow will be able to reach the required 10 points to unlock status. It seems that it's time for him to enter the hidden side to increase his training progress. So Aries communicates with Shadow in just a blink of an eye. A dark aura envelopes Aries. Aries begins to sink slowly. He finally disappeared into his own floor. Aries felt like he had arrived in a void. The next moment, he stood still and opened his eyes. He surprisingly found himself still in his own home. However, it was dark here, as if everything had lost its color. It seems that this is the hidden side of the world. I'm at odds with you. You see if I will hit you or not, and that will be the end of it. As he took a step forward, he finally arrived at the outside of the hidden side. He breathed a sigh of relief instantly. The things in hidden side seemed immovable. When he tried to go from home to hidden side, he couldn't even open his own door. If he weren't clever, he might have been stuck inside the house forever, unable to go to hidden side Aries. But this hidden side is almost identical to the real world. It's just that everything is in shades of dark turquoise, without as many bright colors. It's like a world that hasn't been colored in. And he always feels like there is a hint of gloominess. Not sure if it's just his imagination. Just then, suddenly something is rapidly approaching Aries. Aries also felt it. His first reaction was that his tool Shadow had come. It was afraid that Aries had gotten lost in the hidden side and had come to pick him up. So Aries turned around with a smile and said,
Are you here to pick me up?
When he turned around, he saw a creature with a mouth full of fangs, and a mouth like a black hole. The strange creature raised its right arm resembling a giant sickle bone and slashed towards Aries. Aries was stunned by this. What is this? You look quite unique, but now is not the time to dwell on it. Aries was seen hurling forward with all his might, avoiding this slash. The strange creatures turned around and let out a terrifying scream, then leaped towards Aries again. Aries is literally dancing on the edge of a knife. Every time, he narrowly avoids the attacks of those strange creatures. One time, he even almost got his head chopped off. Aries finally seized an opportunity. He quickly activated Shadow Eyes and unleashed a formation accordingly. Aries immediately launched a move resembling a toad entering water. He directly dove into the formation. The next moment, he returned to the real world. However, because his posture was not particularly graceful, he ended up falling down embarrassingly. Aries struggled to get up from the ground, only to discover that his butt felt chilly. When he turned around, he found that his pants had been torn apart, exposing his two buttocks to the world. Standing up, Aries was also filled with a sense of lingering fear. What was blocking the door? What kind of thing was it after all? To just come slashing without even asking. Are all the creatures from the hidden side so uncouth? Fortunately, during this time, Aries had shadow practiced diligently. His physical condition can be considered quite excellent. Although ghostly creatures are strong, they haven't caused any major harm to Aries. Aries' momentum suddenly rose. He picked up a folding stool and laughed madly, saying,
"Ghost, are you blocking me at the entrance of the neighborhood? Watch me take care of you."
So Aries, who picked up the folding stool, entered the hidden side again and was beaten badly by Ghost. The next day, Aries, unwilling to accept defeat, once again went to the hidden side, but this time things turned out even worse. Not only did he fail to get revenge, but his chest was nearly broken by the ghost's tail. It turns out this thing even has a tail. On the third day, things got bloody, but it was the blood from Aries' buttocks. He got scratched by the ghost. Why is this ghostly creature targeting my buttocks? On the fourth day, Aries finally gave in. He decided to rest at home for a day. Lucia came to tease him. She looked at the scars on his buttocks and didn't know where to start with her complaints. In the end, she could only ask,
"Did you get into a fight these past 2 days?"
Aries chuckled.
"You wouldn't understand. Scars are a man's medal."
Lucia smiled slightly.
"A medal? Whose medal is imprinted on there, but—"
As she spoke, she pressed down forcefully. Aries immediately emitted a scream that sounded like a pig being slaughtered. Lucia spoke up with a hint of annoyance.
"You still know how to feel pain."
When you become stronger, you start to act recklessly without proper respect for authority. Aries suddenly remembered something and asked,
"By the way, there's only 1 month left. What's your plan?"
Lucia was taken aback.
"What do you mean by 1 month left?"
Aries sat up straight and said,
"You haven't forgotten, have you? The martial arts examination is only a month away."